Daithí, the lovely, colourful background is really getting me today. We're on to blog 4, Navigating the New Frontier. Will AI and AI singularity replace teachers in the future? And I would say at the outset to our audience, teachers come in many guises, not just in the first level, second level, third level. There are teachers in every organization. There are teachers in every sector. So sit up and become aware and start getting involved in the conversation. It's a hot topic which is in real need of debate on every level of society and organization. And in my view, from the dual perspective of an organizational psychologist and educationalist, it is a topic every human should pay immediate attention to before our advancement, in inverted commas, becomes our undoing as a species. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background before we start, Daithí?
Let's put the background to the side, except look at the background. The background that we have here deliberately is retro. The reason it's retro is those who would come from the baby boom era, as opposed to Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Gen X, Y, LMNOP. We come from the time of flower power. Hey, peace and love, baby. And in the background is really like the time of Flash Gordon goes to the moon, the old idea of keep it simple. And even though we're talking about AI singularity, which is pushing out like an express train way out there into the futurists, disruption of transformation and beyond, felt the background, which is something which is used in YouTube by different people, is going back retro, because we do not know who we are unless we know where we have come from. And the fact of the matter is, too many people don't realize that we are, as a collective, as a species, we sometimes forget the things which in Irish is wisdom, Kiel Canaha, we buy our wisdom. And we need to know where we have come from to understand where we are going. But with AI singularity, we need to understand that this is one of those times when maybe it's different. And you mentioned teachers, by the way. Teacher is someone who also is a CEO of a company. A teacher is someone who is eminent. So what we're going to talk about right now just doesn't come down to whether AI will replace teachers. Will AI replace CEOs? Will AI replace therapists? Will AI replace and singularity replace nurses, doctors, and everything out there? So people might say, oh, this is just all about education. AI singularity does not stand up and go, hello, doctor, teacher, post person, mechanic. It doesn't. Yeah. So this is relevant to pretty much everything. And again, this blog is to incite debate.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad you like my background.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. So this week, I know you like in all of these blogs. You say here, another elephant in the room. I found your elephant this week very, very interesting. I would say quite futuristic. Describe it.
Well, each elephant is totally different, as you know. And that's the important aspect of looking at what we're talking about. And you know, every week, as I've said to you before, and you agree, every week there's a different elephant. But the elephant, should I say, this week is a much more, it's a much more disruptive elephant, in the sense that, for example, I'm not going to say much, but the elephant I'm using in blog 5 is something else. But this week, it's all about the colors. Look at the vibrancy, look at the energy, look at the colors, see how the elephant has changed. And of course, sometimes the elephant can be very human. Indeed, it can be. And I think that that's what you're referring to, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just love the connotations. We could go on and on about it, but folks, go in there on the blog, read it, and get to the last page and you'll meet the elephant. But just to give our audience a flavor of how we, coming from our own perspectives, view this question, because it'll sort of color how we debate as we go along. Will AI and AI singularity replace teachers in the future? What do you think, Daithí?
I'm going to start from less than a week ago with a fact. My God, a fact in AI singularity. There is a school in London right now, looking up under Sky News. And you will see that there is now a school in Great Britain which is a fee-paying school. I think it's 30,000 sterling per student, where there are now no physical human teachers. Therefore, my answer is, if I was in a court, would be, ladies and gentlemen, this has happened in the United Kingdom. There is now a non-human teacher development there in a school where all students are now immersed in an AI environment, and all of their education towards GCSEs, A-levels, etc., is now being prepared in a personalized, intelligent tutoring environment. And the teacher is AI and everything that will come with AI, Singularity. Fact.
I have two questions down the line specifically on that and implications coming from it. But if you just look at it as a concept now for the moment, what AI can do for education, it's the limitations of AI in education, and AI singularity in the teacher's role. What can AI do for education? Just 1, 2, 3, 4. What can it do?
One, can take out the drudgery of a huge amount of administration. Two, can actually help teachers to be able to prepare their lessons in a way that is inclusive, more diverse, more pluralistic, because it can come up with a huge amount of possibilities, permutations, combinations for each lesson. Three, it can actually design different types of assessment for different types of children who are differently abled. Right. Four, it is a tool like a hammer and a nail that can actually do a specific job. It can actually bring the teacher's, we call it administrative life, to a different level of, and I'm going to use this, awareness and consciousness, so that it can take the teacher to a capacity where their emotional human traits can now become the center of their focus, with all of the necessary admin and drudgery taken care of by AI. But I wish to delineate, under no circumstances at this moment, even though there is AI singularity and empathy coming, we'll talk about it in a different blog, but at this moment in time, the human traits that make us very, very special, that which makes us, for example, emotional intelligence, empathic intelligence, the capacity to think critically and creatively in billions of ways within the synapses within our minds. Sure. At this moment in time, when that comes to human traits, AI cannot replace that at this moment. So, summary, drudgery, admin, all the hard work, the hours and hours of sitting down, trying to differentiate in your lessons, all of that can be taken care of by AI in a matter of minutes. So the teacher can do what the teacher's meant to do: lead forward, engage, enable, empower, build self-esteem, build the future citizens.
And that whole thing of offering data collection and data-driven insights, etc., is very important as well, because you can put hours into that, deducing from statistics and whatever is coming out from assessments, etc. The limitations, I would say, emotional and social skills, creativity and critical thinking, ethical concerns will always linger in the background, and holistic development. But AI singularity in the teacher's role, the future scenarios, AI as a partner, not a replacement?
Interestingly, again, you have questions coming up in Britain. The school over there decided it is on its own. It's a singularity. It can replace teachers, and it's a trial. I'm loving the fact that they're doing this, because, Teresa, we could be waiting 10 years at this moment for someone to try this, and then the elephant not only would have been in the room, the elephant would be out of the room, destroying the house and the environment.
Let's look at that later. I think I have serious questions for the guinea pigs involved. Anyway, the blended learning environments and redefining the role of the teacher.
Yes.
So, I would say AI and AI singularity, will it partially replace or displace teachers in the future? What do you think?
Displace. It won't replace. It will displace, because in many ways, if one goes to YouTube right now and puts in Spock, and Spock who was in Star Trek, and put in Spock in school on his home planet, you will see this concept of all these little students inside their little pods in the ground and walking around the top in a constructionist way. allowing everyone to construct their own learning, you will see what the future of AI singularity could indeed look like way out there. And indeed, Gene Roddenberry was such an incredible thinker in this area, the futurists, the disruptors. But it will displace, but will it ever replace? In my opinion, the day that we do decide to replace the human being with AI of any type in the sense of teachers, that's a sad day for humanity, because at this point, I don't care how AI singularity will become empathic or conscious or cognizant, we as human beings are very precious as a species. And if we give away that power only to AI, then what the hell do we need schools for? Actually, do you know what? Let's go back to hugging trees. Let's go back to playing in the muck. Let's go back to what life is all about, learning from, through, with, and in play.
Sure. Now, I would say in that displacement, there would be a new role for teachers, facilitators of learning, emotional and social guides, ethical mentors, creative and adaptive thinkers. What do you think?
Absolutely. And not only that, but let's go a step further. Imagine that AI singularity will allow teacher to wear a device, and all the students have devices with them, wearing them. The teacher will be able to pick up on any student in the classroom who might be under pressure, suffering, emotionally at a disease, and can actually regulate that thought, that process, that journey synchronously, instantaneously by thought process, therefore leading students on. Now, I know what you're going to say next. Is that not an indoctrination? Well, Blog 5 deals with that when we're getting into the role of parents, etc. But you're asking the questions, Teresa, and I'm giving you the answers.
Okay.
And that's real.
And the questions I ask, I'm really poking the bear. You know, there's a devilment in me with a lot of these questions, but I am just amazed at the body of information and the thought-provoking ideas we're actually coming up with in these chats. Is it not true to say that the designers of AI are busy endeavoring to emulate human creativity, EI, and mentorship through robotics and neural links as we speak?
As we speak, they're already there. When
Yeah.
you hear, it's like someone said once, when you buy the latest mobile phone, they're already designing the third, fourth, fifth generation beyond that. So neural, and you've come into the neural, these are the big ones that we're going to be talking about as they get in. But the fact of the matter is, I would have to say to you, yes, in development, yes, being utilized. If you look again, we spoke about it in the last blog, Disney and the Disney robotics that's on stage. If you look at some of the major companies that are out there around the world, as they're now launching all of their new products, they have robots with them. You get companies in the United States that now have robotics that be controlled by one, what I'm going to use the word no one wants to hear, universal soldier.
Sure.
And those robots can do, with zero empathy, zero emotion, zero sense of consciousness, can do what any war machine can do. We're way beyond that stage, Teresa.
So I know that, let's say you've got the Boston Dynamics creations or humanoid robots like Sophia. They're designed to interact in human-like ways, and efforts are underway to integrate AI into robots capable of responding with empathy and creativity. But the challenge is, I think, robots are far from achieving the nuanced adaptability and authenticity required for true mentorship and emotional connection.
At this moment, you are correct. And that's why we're talking right behind me, AI singularity. Because as we go towards singularity, the thing is singularity and empathy. But at this moment in time, you've used a lovely word there, and thank you for that. The nuances which make the human being so preciously unique. I would love to think that somehow, and I know this is happening, that there are programmers out there trying to bring these nuances into programming and coding. But let's be honest, if that was possible, then surely every human being will be the same. What makes us special, and I like that word, are the nuances, the je ne sais quoi, that which makes us what we are, beautifully in the Gaelic word, éineach. We are singular. Isn't it amazing? The Gaelic word for autism is coming from the word singular. It's éineach. you know, and the whole idea is I exist within my own singularity. So maybe in the Irish language, we knew thousands of years ago that AI singularity was coming, but we never bothered telling the others that is dinne einer. I am a
Uh-huh.
singular autistic person because I exist within myself.
Unique, yeah, yeah. The
Yes.
Irish language is just beautiful, and no language gets it like it. It's
And by the way, just in
fabulous.
case there's any major speaker out there of the Irish language, we call autism úhachas, úha and ulra, single and plural. So that's
Yeah.
why I call it einer. But
Mm.
úha, I exist within my singularity. Just in case there are any natural speakers out there who say, he's wrong. I'm
He's
not
right.
wrong. We're
Yeah.
right.
So look, enter Elon Musk. I need to mention this. Technologies like Elon Musk's Neuralink aim to create brain-machine interfaces, potentially merging human cognition with AI. Now, this could enhance human intelligence and allow for unprecedented collaboration between humans and machines. It has got potential, but it has got, to my mind, ethical concerns. The implications of such integration for autonomy, privacy, and identity, and that single beauty, that uniqueness of the human. I think the implications are profound and unresolved. Are they resolvable?
You've mentioned the one word. I wrote a little bit about this in response to someone who responded to our last blog yesterday on LinkedIn. I said, ethics is probably the most fluid idea, word, concept in AI right now. And why? It's easy to put out an ethical policy for something which is solid, something which is fairly concise and which is predictable. So you bring out a set of ethical competencies. And indeed, it is the center of everything. But if you've got something that's changing fluidly, and if you take different policies, most of the ethical policies coming in AI right now are knee-jerk reactions. They're after the fact. People don't know what's happening, the society which does not
Yeah.
yet exist. Therefore, they're trying to create ethical competences, ethical concepts for something which doesn't yet exist. And therefore, sadly, in my opinion, a lot of the ethics that's coming in AI right now is becoming restrictive, so restrictive that it's actually not even allowing the AI to develop in ways that are so hugely positive. And
So it's
indeed,
coming.
it's coming from, but so, summary, ethics vital, central, absolutely
Sure.
crucial,
Right?
imperative, but we are knee-jerk reacting to something we don't know about
It's out of
from where
fear.
we are.
Fear.
Fear,
Yeah,
fear.
yeah.
And
But
you're right to be fearful.
yes, but there's a real need for upskilling. There's a real need for people to wake up and get in the game, you know? So why humans remain central despite the advancements, I say, is the embodiment of experience, moral reasoning, authenticity, and adaptability in novel situations. What do you think?
I would agree with that. And again, that's relevant to everyone from a nurse in a hospital to a surgeon performing brain surgery, to a CEO in a company, to someone who's teaching or who's in a creche. Every human and a parent,
It's
indeed, all
contextual.
it is.
Contextual.
It's all contextual, but we need to make it relevant to our own lives. And one thing is certain: AI singularity. How many of you out there have held your phone in your hand, you've mentioned something about a holiday, and then all of a sudden, 10 seconds later or 20 seconds, up pops an ad. And people go, oh my God, I wonder how that happened. Duh. I mean, the reality is, or well, we're back again. Big Brother has become Big Sister, big everything. Actually, I even heard the word yesterday in a small G saying AI singularity in God. I went, whoa. Then again, if you think that God, in the Catholic sense, if you were, is omnipotent, then maybe they should have said, well, actually, in the Testament, there is only one AI singularity.
But I often think, you think in Genesis, a man will rule over the land and the seas. He should have put in cyberspace there too.
Well, I think back then woman would have had a problem, but then again, the poor woman was always beaten down by Genesis, wasn't she? Blamed for everything. God knows I would love my mother to be alive, as she was a very strong woman. She would have went, okay, take away the women and the world is gone in 5 seconds. But
So,
Genesis, but even the word, the genesis of something. We are, Risa, at the genesis of AI singularity. But a lot of those chapters are already being written, are written, and are evolving, or revolution, re-evolving as we speak right now. And everything you mentioned, from the robotics right down to the implants, right down to even AI being able to interpret scans for specific tumors and have a 99.99% rate of success, even over the human accuracy. So what you mentioned about data and data collection and assessment and gathering together information and then looking at ways that this can be utilized in a meaningful, mindful, soulful way. Whoa, Daithí, soulful way. That is something that AI Singularity can bring on, but we still have a journey ahead of us. We're at that stage where the light in the tunnel does look like a lamp, and it's not an oncoming train. It is a fusion-driven tsunami, earthquake, volcano coming fast. And we are sitting down, Teresa, my apologies, looking at it. Many people who are happy to eat the sweet in the shop and use the tool, not looking at the diabetes.
So, you know, I put it to you that the present key challenges and limitations in achieving the ambition of singularity, etc., and which presently underscore the ongoing role of humans in creativity, AI, and mentorship, is a mere blip in the march towards singularity, which, when reached, will be in a position to self-direct without human intervention.
Whoa, Teresa's in the zone today. She's not as nice as she was in the last blog. Now what you're doing is, thank you. The day that we reach a singularity where the AI decides to write its own AI, it decides to write itself. It decides to, oh, sorry, Daithí, it decides to right the wrongs of humanity, because AI is binary, black, white, yes, no, up, down, east, west, north, south, no gray areas. In which case, and I hope people may agree with this, look at the world today. Imagine that there was one leadership and it was AI. Do you honestly think that it would allow, if it was able to rewrite itself without any human error in the coding, do you think it would allow us to destroy one another in the way that we are doing, to be act in an inhumane way, to have millions of people with all the food we need in the world to feed 4 times our populations thrown out to waste while others starve, to bomb and kill others? Do you honestly think that a cognizant AI that works in a binary yes, no, north, south, east, west, would allow that to happen? My answer, I believe in a society of AI singularity that goes beyond the human, would actually go, okay, lads, game over. Boom, and sort the problem. Now you're back to Genesis.
If a singularity is achieved, then it would fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with technology, as AI could potentially self-optimize, learn contextual and emotional nuances, and evolve autonomously. Yeah.
Gene Roddenberry now becomes Teresa and Daithí or Murchú. The simple answer to that is, if you wish to project out the possibilities, notice I didn't say probabilities, the possibilities of what AI Singularity can do, the answer is simply yes.
So the counterpoint then of the human AI symbiosis. Even if singularity is reached, a symbiotic relationship between humans and AI might emerge rather than outright replacement. What do you think to that concept?
I would agree totally, because in the blog I talk about that, the sense that, and it's coming back to a point you made again, if you can keep your head when those around you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. And how do you do that? What Rudyard Kipling said, to me, it's down to education, awareness, us being in the know and the knowledge of what it is doing, to grow with AI so that we ourselves are improving as a species. We are pushing ourselves beyond the boundaries of greed, war, killing, inhumanity, so that we can actually do what I do believe AI Singularity can bring. It can bring us people don't use this word correctly. They think of it as sci-fi control, a utopia of the original, you mentioned it, Garden of Eden of Genesis. where we could actually all be there singularly with AI. In other words, human AIology singularity. Human AIology. Oh, wow. When I'm
But
dead, someone
let
will
me
come up
ask
with
you
this
though,
one.
Daithí,
Yes.
will humans embrace such a future? I'm sure that's on your mind. I put it to you that they either A, won't be asked or included in any form of debate, or B, will awake from their present slumber of indifference and wonder what happened.
A and B.
Both.
Both, because the problem, and you forgot C. C is, as a species, we're deeply flawed.
Of course we are.
And the reason being is, again, anyone who disagrees with me, and I don't do it, turn on the news. How, if you were living out in a different galaxy, far, far away, and you zoomed into our news right now, what would you think of this species? What would be your, I'd say to people, what would be your first impression of this species? And yet, I want to acknowledge there are millions out there doing incredible work every day, doing the best they can to be human in every positive, beautiful sense of what we are. But by God, there are millions out there right now who are doing everything in a flawed way to self-destruct. Actually, it's like the lemmings. We're all running towards the edge going, woo, or the turkey's going, bring on Christmas. Or it's,
yes.
We are deeply flawed.
Well, if you look at the news, at the reportage, at any stage, you have got one group risking their lives to try to rectify what the other group are, the pain they're incurring and the destruction they're incurring on innocent people. But I would say to you that many people have tuned out and they're not listening to the news anymore, and that media can be quite flawed too, in that you get a biased perspective and there's a lot of manipulation going on, etc., etc. There's another 10 blogs in that, right? But if you look at the humans won't be asked or included. There's concentration of power. We have to admit that. There's a speed of development, and there's the historical precedence. Remember, in the industrial and digital revolutions, major shifts occurred with limited public input, with society adapting retrospectively. And I reckon AI may follow a similar path, with changes imposed rather than collaboratively shaped.
Well, all systems of government are susceptible to corruption. And I'm going to put in my word, and democracy is the best of a bad lot. I don't think the people who would live in a socialist, communist, or etc., would agree with that. So even within our own system of how you're looking upon this, the reality is that if you look to the past, tout ça change, tout c'est la même chose. History repeats itself. Yeah. And sadly, from a human perspective, whether it is even in Mel Brooks's film History of the World Part 1, the Inquisition, the Inquisition, the fact is, even taking something like that, people being nearly put to death because the earth is flat or it's round. I mean, humanity, generally speaking, will be led by those who are in power. And you mentioned the likes of news and all of that. Again, the one commonality in everything here, the one common denominator here is they're all controlled by humans, as indeed is AI in the coding. And the flaw is not the AI. The flaw is not the camera in the newsroom. The flaw, it is the person or persons who are inputting. And therefore, back to this. But so what do I think? Is there a major possibility, like put 1,000 people in a room? What's the one constant in the world right now? Change, yay! And who wants change? Boom, there's no one left in the room. So people will allow that to come from others who will push that change, yes.
So it's reactive rather than proactive, our reaction at the end of the day. You know, the slumber of indifference, you've got sudden realization when it's too late, and then mourning the impact of the inaction when it's too late, you know? So let me move on. We are presently witnessing a wall of silence, nods of approval, slavish succumbing to the convenience of tools such as ChatGPT, mixed with silent trepidation as to where all this may lead. On behalf of educators across the world in general, when in fact it is the primary educators, the parents, and the actual teachers in schools who should be to the fore in the design of AI for education, and I would broaden that, those involved in education in any realm, and ensuring that key principles such as ethics, fairness, and respect for the supremacy of the human over the tool is being safeguarded. Am I being unfair in this assertion? Does my perspective not call for addressing an urgent blind spot?
Again, the simple answer to that is yes. But OpenAI, which is chat, and now you've got so many others, they have also enhanced and engaged and allowed and empowered the human to create some incredible possibilities. There are people out there, again, like we said, who through neural implants that have coded by AI can walk when they never walked. They can see when they could not see. They can hear when they could not hear. By the way, go back to the Bible again. In those days, they were called, it's a miracle. And it is a miracle. But coming to the point you made, in allowing the counter argument, which I do, I would have to say that the primary educators of every human being on this earth, whether you like it or not, is the parent. The first time that child comes into this earth, that child, even though with Dolly the sheep, I better change my mind now at this stage, theoretically came out of a womb. But if you call a test tube a womb, but the reality is that parents are the primary educators. And again, it comes back to the word education. And you said, will AI replace teachers? There will be a major displacement, but the teacher who does not know how to use AI will definitely replace the teacher who basically the teacher who does will definitely replace the teacher who does not know, but the parent who decides to go and keep themselves, remain ignorant of the facts, is now opening a Pandora's box.
Sure. Right. So you were looking at the current landscape as I describe it, silent trepidation and passive acceptance. So it's a dual dynamic. So on the one hand, there's enthusiastic adoption of tools like ChatGPT. On the other hand, there's a silent unease. I think people think it's beyond them and that it's up there. Even people who are in the professional realm and who are working in high-powered jobs feel that it's beyond them. So we leave it to those who are the specialists. You have a lack of understanding. You have power imbalance, and that, to my mind, is huge. And you have cultural inertia, a tendency to accept new technologies as inevitable rather than questioning their design or purpose, and it creates that passive dynamic, wouldn't you think?
Well, let me take some examples from history. When smoking and cigarettes came in first, and you know it was a very genred thing for ladies to be seen in private clubs smoking. Smoking was considered to be that of the elite. It was good, it was this. And indeed, look at all the ads that were out there in the earlier years. And now you realize that actually, wow, we won't even go there. Shall we say, how many years later? To take a second analogy, and maybe in the same way, those who know how to drive car. Then they learn how to drive an automatic car if they so wish, or as they call them, a shift stick or a gear. But most people on this earth, if you show them a Formula One car, they'll go, oh no, I could never drive that. But it's still a car. So the same thing is with AI.
In principle.
In principle, it's the same thing. So sometimes that which is presented to us, i.e., I come back to the sweet in the sweet shop, the tools and the applications of AI, it is good. It looks good because the sugar rush is there. It makes things easier, or I don't have to eat the sweet. But we're not looking at the long term. In reality, Teresa, everyone can drive a Formula One car. But the fact is that if you look at what the smoking has done, everyone can, including people who are differently abled through the neuro implants of this, so which, why go into a virtual reality right now when you can bloody well drive a rocket off to Mars if you want, and you can become part of that X environment, that multimodal, immersed environment. Indeed, a company even in Ireland, they're immersive right now. They're doing incredible work in that ed tech area with the various companies with whom they're dealing. But it's just the sense that sometimes we as humans lack in our own self-esteem and confidence. So we give
yeah.
everyone, we leave everyone else drive the Formula One cars, and then we go, oh wow, oh, ow, eat, ooh. But in Ireland, you can go to Mondella Park and you get into a bloody car and you can drive it around the track yourself and realize, hey, it's not that I'm saying this is easy. What I am saying is, if you give away your power, will you stop moaning and groaning about it and blaming everyone else, i.e., losing your head when those around you are losing theirs?
Let's bring the conversation back then to the realm of the primary educators.
Yes.
They're uniquely positioned because they understand the learner's needs. They shape the values and the ethics, yet their limited involvement in AI design raises really legitimate concerns, whether it be about whether AI tools align with the developmental priorities of the learners, or whether they safeguard human dignity and avoid reducing students to mere data points or consumers of automated systems. So why educators and parents are not yet to the fore? Obviously, there are key considerations: lack of technical literacy, time constraints, and I think this one is huge: absence of a platform for dialogue.
Well, that's what we're trying to perform right now. I mean, you've got UNESCO's teacher competences and student competences, and indeed you have OECD. Indeed, you've got all the national policies. Indeed, Ireland recently, even down to a group like Bernardo's, is bringing out their policy on AI.
Sure.
The Irish government have set up a committee and a commission whereby various people are now monitoring from Commission Numéan, which is our media, to look at what's happening. But I suppose in a lot of ways, what we need to acknowledge here is that if we are happy to give away our power, but in the colleges of education, there is a change. But if I could answer simply, to become an educator in Ireland, we'll take Ireland and most other European countries, you have to, first of all, have a certain level of educational attainment. Educational attainment is achieved through, in many ways, traditional modes of assessment.
It's the point system, yeah.
It's the points in many countries.
Memory.
So therefore, if you are taught to drive a car only with one leg, then how long is it going to take for you to realize you have a second leg? So if the system is a system of traditional means of assessment and preparing teachers only, then you can't expect them in the same way that if I put someone into a factory and I teach them how to mechanically only utilize something manually, then how am I going to expect them to use computerization that's in there? So this comes back to the initial IVET, VET, the initial skills, initial digital skills, the DigiComp competences that are in Europe right now, the digital education plan, which is out there. It has to go back to the sense that at third level in particular, where most of these people are prepared for the society, we call it, even though it begins the day you're born, we have to ensure that there is a pathway, a journey of reawakening, of renouement, of opening up, of revolution, evolution.
Sure.
People talk about, Teresa, if I can do this, best practices. I have a huge problem with those two words because there are evolving best practices.
It's putting a limit.
If you say there are best practices, then that is the best piece of glue that anyone could ever put on a biro or a pen.
So you go no further. Yeah.
Evolving. Notice the word evolving. And we now have to look seriously at what's happening in the preparation and many of the universities and third level institutions. And I know, for example, the University of Limerick right now is beginning to bring a lot of that because that used to be NIHE, the National Institute of Higher Education.
Sure.
And it considered itself always in Ireland to be the university, at that time the college, which was leading the way in technology. And if you go back to Ed Walsh, who was the president at that time, he would claim that it was the leader, virtually one of them in the world. You get many universities and colleges that have a specific penchant, a specific way of looking at something. But the fact of the matter is, do you think AI Singularity cares about who you are, what you are, or where you come from? The fact is it's going, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and them. I do what I want when I want because I'm out there in Singularity and you can't control me.
Takes me to the next question. Are educators truly being consulted? Does it not suit the business world to lead the design and rollout of AI with emphasis on the bottom line and the race on who can get bigger, better, more sophisticated, and more profitable the first?
Sure, isn't that always the case? Sure, listen to me. How many ministers have gone into how many departments of education around Europe and around the world, and the first thing they do is consult with business to see, please forgive me, meeting, even though I'm a vegetarian, meeting sausage out. In other words, we need sausages for society, so anything that goes in has to be a sausage, or anything that goes in has to be a bison frise, or has to be something like that. So the fact is that in reality, this has always been the case.
Yes, you've got the black box effect hinted there in the background as well. So, educators, I believe, are not central to the conversation. There's token involvement. There's a focus on efficiency. There's lack of channels. So those channels need to be created by educators and by those, the training colleges, etc., by third level and beyond. And the channels need to be created in the organizational business world, and there needs to be a meeting of minds. There needs to be a space created where, remember, anybody who passes through the education system, they are the future leaders, they are the future workers, they are the people who will populate and lead and drive organizations of the future. But those in the business world don't seem to place much regard on that from their perspective, which is wrong in many ways. Then you've got the business world's dominance. You've got the profit-driven priorities, profitability, scalability, and the market share. You've got speed over reflection, who's been first to the market. And you've got ed tech as a market, a huge market, multi-million billion market. And then you've looking at the implications of business-led AI in education. Well, there is an erosion of pedagogical values. There's data exploitation. There's standardization versus individualization. There's inequality, and the inequities are being perpetuated. You've got why it suits businesses to sideline educators. I put it to you, it's not merely an oversight, but a structural dynamic that keeps educators from leading AI design.
There's
What
a
do you think?
major disconnect. There always has been. And very often people have come along and made a point that you go to school, and how many times have I heard, and people around the world heard, you go to school because it's like a big creche. And you're in there and there's a babysitter in there and they're taking care of you, and then you come out into the big bad world and we know what you need to make this society work. That's the disconnect that has always been there, that somehow or other and it's so wrong, because someone said, what is a teacher? A teacher is a creator of the future citizens of this planet Earth. A teacher is a motivator, an unconditional lover of bringing people to the best they can be within themselves as existing unique, we're back to that word Einrach, geniuses, to try and do that. And what kills that is the fact that very often industry is trying to drive the nail with a hammer, and society is pushing in assessment models which cannot, I'm putting it simply, how the hell can assessment models do what they're supposed to do when everyone is neurodiverse? Assessment models are not neurodiverse. So really, it is being driven.
We're looking at a tension between the heart and the head.
But the heart and the head are, in Spanish, physical, psychological, spiritual, physical, psychological. They're all connected. Otherwise, we go from ease to disease. Oh, sorry, ease to dis-ease. If we disconnect our physical, psychological, and spiritual, we go into a realm of dis-ease. But in society, we call that disease.
Yes, but my analogy is that the teacher is coming from a space of the heart, and with that vision, business is coming from a place of factual, the head, meeting the bottom line. Now, the way forward, demanding inclusion, creating ethical frameworks, investing in educator-led innovation, and building awareness. And investment in education is pathetic. That's what's the halter. That's what's holding education back. And unfortunately, education is dependent on big tech for the fundraising and to keep it going. How many principals stay awake at night wondering how they're going to pay the bills that are on their table because the funds are not in yet? So you get your first capitation grant in January, 2/3 of it, and in May, June, you get the 1/3. So you're running on empty from September to January. Would any business survive on that? And schools, education, it is a business, and it's run like a business, and it actually has to answer more stringently than some private sector businesses.
Well, you've got the FFSU in Ireland, which is like that everything that goes through schools right now is basically audited annually. And the fact is that each school is uniquely different. I will give this to the present minister, that she has made huge leap forwards to try, for example, people will laugh at this if they're listening internationally, to provide Irish schools with hot meals for their children that come in, because many children are coming into Ireland right now from many other environments where they're coming from I would have to say, a hostile environment where they don't even have the privilege of having a pair of socks in their shoes. So forget about food. So the basics of running a school, to me, we talk about leadership. And of course, we said that in the other blogs that leadership is something that's a very unusual concept, because it no longer means what it meant in the sense of the roles that are there. But within education, each teacher is a leader. And that leader is inside that classroom. And once that door closes, very often to these children, you become their leader. You become someone who is there to inspire, to engage, to make them laugh. We're not laughing enough. But you are right. You are right. The soul of the human being is probably the most important aspect of education, to bring them on a journey, which does need to change in the way that it is assessed. But ministers around the world try to, again, in the same way we said about ethics and AI, there's a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, let's feed them. Let's give some money for books. Oh, let's buy pouches to put phones away. It's a lot of knee-jerk reaction, instead of saying, once again, that 4-year-old, when they start school in Ireland, by the way, in junior infants, their first year, major, that 4-year-old has the capacity to be the leader of a country. Sure. Every single person. And if you're going to basically cut off their oxygen, then I challenge anyone out there to cut off their oxygen for more than, hell, let's say 5 minutes, because I know there are people out there who can do more than that. Let's see how smart you are then. If you cut off the lifeline to schools through the funding, and indeed the unions in Ireland, I know the Irish Teachers, National Teachers Organisation, INTO, would always say, as well as the TUI, ASTI and all the others, would say that you can never put enough investment in education. But business would say, listen to me now, we now need to get that money more into ed tech and investment, and we need more innovation. We need to be able to go out there more R&D. That's the blind spot. And then you were saying that then these companies put money into schools, but that's not allowed, because it's not ethical to have a company to come in and put money into a school, because that means that school is giving that business priority over another. So therefore, what you're doing is you're cutting off the fingers in the school to self-regulate, to self-fund. And also, Teresa, for God's sake, schools having to self-fund. Okay, every person in government right now, I want you to self-fund for your department. Actually, go out there and self-fund. Now let's see how smart you're going to be. And once again, I come back to this. People who say that teachers are not CEOs, not leaders, that they're not in the capacity of the mindset of being in business, I challenge anyone out there to go into a classroom of 4-year-olds and have no resources and come out at the end of the day alive. I taught 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds for 8 years. And I'll tell you one thing. Notice what I said. I taught them. I better change that. They taught me how to be social, interactive, playful, mindful, conscious, cognizant, empathic, loving. And through all of these things, we together went on a journey of self-discovery, where we opened the reading and the maths and the music and the writing and the art and the beauty of learning. But sadly, at the end of every year, we had to do that test, that test. And that test said that that child could not achieve a STEM score of 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And the parent would come in and say, why is my child not at a STEM score 10? And you go, because the child under that assessment model is not I'll take a simple, a mathematician. That child is not a very literate child. But by the way, I'd like to tell you, your child is an incredible artist, a beautiful musician. No, forget that crap. That's not real. That's not real.
Garner's intelligences. So the stakes, I say, are too high to leave this to business world alone. What exactly is at stake? When educators, parents, and teachers realize the error of their ways, will it be too late? What's at stake?
Humanity itself is at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best.
That's it all.
That's where we're at. The elephant in the room, Teresa. This is why we're having this conversation. I know that people probably are thinking that whatever about you, they have huge respect for you, but this lunatic here called Daithí is so far out there, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And you know what? I agree with you. But my job is not to know what I'm talking about. It is, I hope, to incite debate around a possibility, probability of what is happening now on that train of the earthquake, tsunami, volcano that we are ignoring. And unless we wake up, then when it comes to being too late, don't say, I blame him or them or nobody told me. Well, this is happening now.
I would say what's at stake is, to our in the interest of our listeners now, the purpose of education is at stake. Autonomy and agency is at stake. Ethical erosion, teacher-student relationships, societal implications, and that's huge. The dehumanization, the shifting of the power dynamics. So will it be too late? Well, we'll have ingrained systems. Generational impact, I think, is huge. Students educated in a heavily AI-driven environment may grow up lacking essential human skills like empathy, critical thinking, and creativity. And this generational impact would ripple through society, affecting workplaces, communities, and global progress, and become so ingrained that it's irreversible. You've loss of expertise, ethical breaches, etc. And why are parents and teachers slow to act? Complacency, overwhelmed by the complexity of the whole thing, and it's convenience culture as well. So the wake-up call, what needs to happen now, Daithí? Educators and parents, they need to mobilize, don't they?
They do. A lot of things you've mentioned are STEM. And then you brought in the lovely letter STEAM. In about 2018-19, I came up with the concept, and I claim this concept because I copyrighted it, but for the world to use it, streams education. Sure. STEM with the A, but the OR as in 21st century multiliteracies, or, and S, the sustainability of all of this. And streams education is on the website that we have called biomeu.eu, BIOMEBIOYOU.eu. And under that, we've got streams education, the whole sense of the package. And if we don't look at ourselves as a species, that we're part of 21st century multiliteracies, and those literacies are not just the literacies that are assessed, they're everything you've mentioned. That which makes us human is a literacy. It can be something to communicative, non-communicative, verbal, non-verbal literacy, all of the things that are special. The things that we now have full capacity and power and control over to ensure that we lead how AI can be #AI for good, #AI for all, #AI for equity, not equality, equity of opportunity. And if we don't put ourselves in a place on the citizens' advice bureaus, if we don't put in our ideas when we get an option to add to policy, if we're not up there speaking and asking the questions, then we're basically giving away our power. We have an election in Ireland now. People are coming to the door saying, I'll get you new houses, I'll give you €1,000 for a child that's born. And they're not asking, but what kind of society is that child actually going to grow up in, where €1,000 basically will buy them what?
I put it to you, Daithí, if we put what we've been speaking in front of what's coming to the door, definitely the men in the white coats will be coming to collect you that evening.
Yes, now, but they wouldn't get elected. They wouldn't get elected with those, would they?
let's conclude our first part, and then we'll move on to delving into and shredding your blog 4. Okay, thank you, Daithí. Okay. So now, Daithí, we're back on to the second part of our chat on blog 4. And I'm delving right in now to the actual points you made, and come back to that David Gain College, London, UK. Opened its first teacherless classroom utilizing AI instead of human teachers. Many wonder if AI would entirely replace human educators, and this UK initiative is perceived to be the first of many other global AI exclusive classrooms. So the debate, however, often overlooks the complex, multifaceted role teachers play, which extends far beyond the transfer of knowledge. Daithí 2024. Now I put it to you, Daithí, are these students not simply being the guinea pigs in this experiment in the UK?
There are two ways of looking. The first one, I will go back to one of my favorite series ever, Star Trek. And the species I'm going to speak about are the Borg. So here's my first answer to you, Teresa. Resistance is futile. That's one answer. Just give in and go with it. The second answer I'm going to give is this. First of all, I wish to congratulate that school for having I would have to say the guts to do this at a time when probably the backlash, apart from maybe the parents who are paying such exorbitant fees for the private school, the backlash would be that now you have come back to a point you've made a million times. Money talks and does nothing. So now you have a massive inequity. Forget about inequality, where now for the first time, money is showing that if you can have all of this AI pushing forward to make you the best vomiter. Sorry, I shouldn't have used that word, vomiter, for GCSEs. But you are in a position whereby if you are in an AI-controlled environment, teacher environment, notice what I use, AI, teacher environment for personalized intelligent tutoring, where there is no physical teacher there, then you have a situation where the product of this will be a computerized AI Singularity student. And it is now being created by money, and an inequity of opportunity. Oh, wow, it has happened even faster than we talked about in blog 1. And you looked at me and you went, crucify him. And now I'm saying to you, hold on to the nails, Teresa, you're not a hammer today.
Well, have parents any comeback legally and or financially if and when they realize that their investment is not paying the dividends they had hoped for? The situation is so novel, and the case law hasn't been written yet. What do you reckon?
I mean, have they come back? I mean, okay, how can you have a comeback of something that you're happy to pay, let's face it, tens of thousands of sterling for every year, when you're the person who's willing to do it? And also, in many of these cases, these students who are very privileged already have their future path laid out for them. Many of them, say I, are going to go into businesses anyway that already exist because of who their parents are and from which they come. So therefore, this is just, come on, this is kind of one of those, hey, let's have a little bit of a trial here and see how it works. But what I am loving is that someone is actually doing this at an early stage, whereby for the first time ever, we may get data. We may see what the data are, and we may be able to just extract from that things
based on it. Yeah.
But you're not going to put policy in place of that, because the people who have children, the vast majority, significant majority of people who have children in this school are the people who are already running that country. Oops.
Yes, yeah. I see where you're coming from. But the ethical and practical concerns, ethics of using students as test subjects, reputation risk for the schools, the role of regulators, the recommendations for the parents are the ones who would sign the contract, and they obviously know what they're letting their children in for, and they feel that it's offering them the best advantage for their future. And there's consumer protection laws and negligence claims, etc. If, for instance, a child comes out of that situation with heightened mental issues, etc., well, they've signed on the dotted line and they've paid well for the child's education in this guise. Now,
Prove it. You can't prove it. You're now doing what we said in the earlier part of this, and everyone is doing it. You're putting existing mindsets of legalities on something which the society and the results of that do not yet exist. And also, let's face it, there are many parents out there who believe that students spend so much time going through, and I'm going to say openly what people say, rubbish of revision of hundreds of pages of books, when a personalized intelligent tutoring system, AI, which has been driven towards a sense of AI singularity, can look at, communicate with, connect with the student to speed up, slow down the level of speed of learning, exposure to information that is considered to be relevant. Because AI would look at, let's say, I'm going to exaggerate, the last 10,000 pages of an exam, and it would be able to bring together through a binary logic, here's the most likely scenarios that will turn up in the next exam, present you with the personalized, intelligent environment, prepare you to be able to regurgitate that information, and in the end, you come out with all your A levels up in the top. Whoa! Parents are going to go, hey, get rid of the teachers, because now there is no human flaw. It is now simple. What we spoke about, up and down, north and south, east and west, very simple, personalized intelligent tutoring, which is personalized at a level to deliver for you, just for you. It's like designing a clone that is just for you, to keep you alive and everything you need. We've heard of, I'm just in a medical sense in the past, how parents have had siblings born to keep a first sibling alive because they had rare diseases, by utilizing various parts or organs in their bodies, by transferal over. And there's been films done on this. And in my mind as a human being, I go, oh my God, one was born to keep another alive just to do this. And we look at it in an ethical sense of where we're at. And some people would go, excuse me, that keeps my firstborn alive. That's why the second was born. And others would go, how can you possibly do that? But in the case of AI singularity, humans are not standing up, seeing the dichotomy, the disconnect, the problem, the possible diabetes in the room, the elephant in the room.
So in your blog, you quote Darling Hammond et al. 2020. You said, while AI holds immense potential to reshape the educational landscape, there's a compelling case that it will augment rather than replace the uniquely human qualities required in teaching, such as emotional intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and ethical guidance. Is this the way the creators of the algorithms, especially if they're not from an educational background, see things?
I would say it's how AI singularity, when it's writing itself, will see things.
You hope.
Because I would hope, but I would imagine if AI is binary and it doesn't understand gray areas, and it sees the lack of human empathy, the inhumanity, the problems that are there, it will hopefully, one might say, possibly be able to recreate itself to be that sense of singularity, cognizance, consciousness, to be able to engage with human beings as a species as to how we were created initially, in the sense of being extremely beautiful species with such potential. And man, do we squander it. So I'm going to posit out there, in the knowledge that there are now people throwing their shoes at the screens, that if AI singularity reaches its full singular potential, then it could be a utopia of incredible, beautiful connectivity to take care of things that humans find very difficult to do in a society, which is the French call le pas de vie, the pace of life. Keep going, and it can do that. But I also am going to give the counterbalance. In as much as there's a yin, there is a bloody yang. And the yang is the opposite also has the potential, because the human being is doing the coding. But if AI singularity rewrites, it can do it the other way. There is no answer here. This is #AI debate.
So it's argued that a reductionist view that simplifies teaching into a set of repeatable tasks misses the inherently human qualities required to foster learning in all its dimensions. Now, placing this perspective in the realm of fast-paced advancing AI towards AI singularity, is that argument not openly under attack?
Of course it is. Do you remember the old saying, practice makes perfect?
Yes.
Well, that's not true. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Practice makes permanent, one of my other guests told me. Go on.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's what happens. If we believe, as has been always the case, practice makes perfect. Everyone says practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. No, perfect practice makes perfect and permanent. But what is permanent? If you reach permanency, then you're never going to go to the next level.
You're not going to
So
advance.
therefore,
Yeah.
you're not going to advance. So therefore, that's why I say never talk about best practices, talk about evolving best practices.
Yes.
So everything that I've written in the blog is written with tongue in cheek also, Teresa. I write the blogs to hope, in the hope that someone...
In a provocative way, yes.
Yeah, but a lot of people out there, and I wish to acknowledge all of you, and thank you for listening to us. But so many of you are acknowledging this and accepting this as being, yes, yes, gospel. And it's not I'm asking you to crucify us. What we're asking is, like someone wrote in yesterday, hey guys, how do you all feel about the ethics of this blog 5 and parents? I love the fact that someone wrote that in, because I put a huge counter argument at the end of blog 5, but in blog 4 also switched it in the idea of teachers being replaced. We need to wake, your thing, there needs to be an awakening after the Inquisition.
Absolutely.
And the Inquisition isn't yet happening, only in the sense that, in the same way that you mentioned it, it is being ruled by those who want to rule it, and many sheep are following through. And the problem is it will become too late, because we will be disempowered, disconnected, disengaged. We will become dehumanized, and the human AI-ology will then become human and AI. And that's why I coined that word. Human AI-ology becomes human and AI, instead of being a human AI-ology. Anything that normally we put in the word ology is like a sense of something that is grown out of a collaboration, an ology, a theology, an ology of those. But right now, that's why that word was put out there.
So just to remind our listeners, AI singularity, if achieved, it represents the point where AI surpasses human intelligence and becomes capable of autonomous self-improvement. Now, in this context, the traditional argument that only humans can foster learning holistically would be significantly challenged. Why? Because AI, its autonomy, could allow it to evolve in ways that overcome current limitations, including fostering deeper relational understanding. And AI could potentially stimulate human qualities so effectively, or simulate, human qualities so effectively that the distinction between AI empathy and the real human empathy become blurred for the users. So there's all sorts of arguments that we can put up there. Let's move on. I'm conscious of your time, and I'm conscious of not having too long-winded a presentation for our listeners to listen to. As respect for the value of educators as the purveyors of holistic education continues to dwindle, often at the hands of media, will society unwittingly fall for the lure of AI and lead humanity into the net of AI singularity from which there is no return for humanity?
I don't think that that's the case. I think AI singularity will basically lead us there. We're not, in many cases, 99.999% of the human population won't even know that this is happening, because it has already happened for the last 50 years.
Yes,
and the fact of the matter is that those, and you've used the word, those in power will very much be in a situation, if they so wish, going back to Orwell's 1984, whereby they can control, utilizing this in a way that can manipulate. Look at the way we've talked about elections being manipulated. Look at the idea of fake news. The amount of videos out there right now, even the sense of using AI avatar. And imagine that. That's in the sense of driving the car as opposed to the Formula One car, that's able to actually convince people that things are actually happening, because so many people are connected now to instantaneous, synchronous global media. And sadly, everyone believes what they're seeing and reading. And remember, the whole idea of education before was, if I only hear something I mean, what percentage am I going to remember? If I hear and I see, what percentage am I going to remember? If I hear and I see and I do, but if I hear and I see something on the news and it's coming from a reputable news channel, then I'm going to go, oh my God, that's the news. So there were times in history of humanity from 1939 to 1945 whereby certain youth were indoctrinated, and indeed in many countries, by being, shall we say, I would say bombarded by psychological ologies that turn them into, yeah, we won't go there. So the potential for that is happening right now.
So what are the risks of unwitting surrender to AI singularity? Unwitting, emphasis on unwitting.
Okay, unwitting. Jump out of a plane without a parachute.
Pardon me?
You go jump out of a plane without a parachute. You'll at least enjoy 60 seconds of elation until such time as gravity will pull you down. That's unwitting, because there are some people who would do. So the reason I've taken that analogy is simple. There is a beauty in skydiving. There is an incredible, wonderful feeling of parachuting. But if you jump out unwittingly out of a plane, trust me, barring a miracle, you will become a
past tense. Well, I would say there's entrenchment of AI in decision making, there's diminished human agency, and there's irreversible dependency. And that's where we're headed.
Well, again, I've written all this in the blog, and that's why I love that you keep bringing up the blog. And I actually try to take the ordinary human being's place out there and speaking the way I do, because the blog otherwise would give. But you are right. All of that. But again, we said, the counterbalance of that is we also, through education, through Journey Together, through the fact that there is no such thing as I go to a creche, I go to primary school, go to second school if I so wish, or third level if I so wish, and into industry, and somehow or other, remember, meat, sausage. Sure. Everything. In other words, we said this in the other blogs. If you're a hammer, everything is a
nail. Yeah.
A nail. But everything doesn't have to be a hammer and a nail. And also, what is a hammer? If I was a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning. I mean, literally, what are you hammering? Sadly, humanity is hammering itself.
So the ways to avoid this dystopian outcome, really, reassert the value of educators, involve educators in AI development, public awareness and dialogue, which is the very reason we're running these blogs and discussions, regulate and resist overreach. Will society act on time? In the vacuum of awareness and knowledge and education, I would say no. They need to recognize the stakes that are involved, overcome the seduction of convenience, and ask the right questions, and balance progress with principles.
History would say that you're right, because we put ourselves into the dark ages, and then we had the golden ages. And a certain King Louis would have been called Le Roi d'Or, the Golden King. We went into the Inquisition, and we came out the other side of it. We went into world wars, we've come out the other side of it, or have we? The fact is that, sadly, it's nearly only when humanity is pushed to the brink, pushed to the point of nearly destruction, that we actually awaken and open our eyes and do it. And sadly, that is how it seems history has done. But I come back to that dirty word in the room, that elephant called COVID. When humans, and I'm not going to get into the argument that we were all put away by others. Let's just say that COVID was what it was, and we all went away for 2 years, and we all locked ourselves away to keep everyone else in the utopia free of any form of virus. And what happened in Ireland? The foxes came down the middle of the road. The badgers came out of their holes. The chickens were in the middle of the farm going, cluck, 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 cluck. The flowers grew in the middle of the main pavements of the main streets. And humans went, we are, they are. Oh, well, actually, we're not. All of those animals out there are going, ha, 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 ha. The fact is that humans very often have to go to that stage. But no one talks about COVID anymore now, except in reports and groups put together to see what we did wrong. And that's right, by the way. because so many people lost so many incredibly beautiful people in their lives that they never had the moment or second to mourn or to grieve their loss. But the fact is, I would posit humanity has forgotten about anything they learned from COVID, because now we're back on the express train again, going whoa, 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 faster, 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 and get away from what we actually learned. And
But
AI singularity is not too different.
for me, that COVID period held a lot of overt and covert messages, and it tested people in terms of where they saw themselves as humans and where they saw themselves in terms of, the handshake
And
and
the
the
handshake.
absolute need for the handshake and the embrace. And Erska Hira a Warren Nadini,
Yes.
So I put it to you. You've said that the potential of AI singularity raises the question of whether AI could not only mimic but surpass human cognitive abilities to perform complex educational tasks autonomously. I put it to you that we are on the road to AI being able to mimic sentiment and EI, considering that we are finding it difficult at this point in time to differentiate between what messaging is humanly generated or machine generated.
Of course, we go back to the news again. Is it fake news? Is it real news? Some people don't even know how to differentiate. They actually accept, and they accept blindly. I mean, it's funny. There are none so blind as those who do not wish to see. We've said that before. And at the same time, this is a real possibility. We're
I
seeing it
reckon it'll only
happening
get
now.
worse. It'll get worse.
But you see, you're saying getting worse. I would love to think that if we awaken, like from the dark ages to the golden age, if we start to take back the power, we start to look on this as something that can be used, for example, climate crisis, climate change, how we can use AI to plant in areas. For example, if you knew there was 1 million floods coming every year in certain areas, why would you plant crops there? Are there not better crops you can plant there that love water and floods? AI, through all the data that are there, can look at all of this climatic stuff and can predict, hypothesize, and synthesize that information to direct us towards good, to allow in an educational system, in what education was, to move forward, to be more singular, to address the humans. And there's nothing wrong with personalized intelligent tutoring, as long as the human traits that will not be, should not be, cannot be replaced by AI singularity are still that unconditional conscious love of meaningful, mindful, soulful connectivity. And those are the traits by which we can actually take this car and use it for what it was meant to be, instead of getting drunk and taking drugs and killing people. That's it, both sides.
There is a need for a call for vigilance, but who will make the call? And furthermore, who will listen? The power is in the hands of big tech and the money to drive AI.
The power is in the hands because they have the money to drive, yes. But as long as people, someone said to me last night, look at me, I have an iPhone, such and such. And I went, yeah. And can you answer phone calls? Yeah. Well, isn't that what it's supposed to be, a phone? And they went, no, 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 no. I said, but hold on, a phone was something the old days. You went, ching, 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 ching. And then you got an operator who came back 2 hours later and connected you with America. But the fact is that we are the ones who will keep consuming and buying and paying. And as long as we consume and buy and pay, welcome to the world of business. And business is there to do what? Make money. And as long as humans will buy, business will continue to develop AI and push it.
But who can make the call for vigilance? Educators and academic institutions, governments and international organizations. Now, governments and entities like UNESCO, the UN, EU have a mandate to prioritize public interest over profit and can play a critical role in regulating AI development. You've got civil society and advocacy groups, NGOs, think tanks, etc. But NGOs are becoming a dirty word when it comes to, in terms of the money and the money trap and where we're going and where we're being led. Big tech employees and whistleblowers. And remember, there's a massive price to be paid if you become a whistleblower. Then, right, it's one thing shouting, who will listen? The public awareness and demand, the policymakers, the tech companies, power dynamics, big tech and money. All of these are the layers that we must get through to be heard. So we need to realize what's at stake, the human-centered education, how the balance can be shifted, and we need to take back our power through coalition building, public awareness campaigns, regulation and standards, global frameworks. You spoke about the EU AI framework, and empowering educators. But there's a real need for a wake-up. So he who tries to put out a call to action runs many risks. The risks of being sidelined as a conspiracy theorist, while society at large and policymakers specifically are not upskilling, don't understand AI, and will run with the safest, loudest voices, i.e. big tech, from whom they derive their perks, however short-sighted that might appear. Now, I paint an awful picture, don't I? But the call to action, you really need courage. And you need to have the language to express in real terms your fears, and not to feel that AI is out there, is another world, doesn't concern me, and I'd be afraid to go there.
You need to have the medium to do that. But let me take a comparison, if I may, in something that everyone knows about. We're just, at the moment, finishing COP29.
Yes.
And COP29, all theoretically, all the countries of the world coming together to ensure that there is no planet B. Sure, they can't even agree on simple things like pollution, emissions. They can't even agree on simple things like that which, think about this, that which can save this planet, that which can save their children if they have them, their grandchildren, the future generations. We cannot agree on something as simple and as crucial to the survival of this planet, because most and many of the interests there are driven by ching, ching, ching. So you're asking me about AI singularity. Now, so if I said to you, Teresa, if you do the following, you will be able to live an extra 10 years or more, a happy life, if you do the following. Or if you ignore it, let's face it, you're on the highway to hell from AC/DC. And you basically, as a human being, say, hell, the highway to hell is good, because at least I'm going to go out happy because I'm going to be wealthy and make loads of money. And sure, I'll wink, wink, nod, nod, and I'll agree to it.
So if you are not selfishness.
Well, humanity, many people on this planet, sadly, are driven by ching, ching, ching. And the fact is, we can't do it in planet A. Sadly, as you said it, those people are out there screaming, roaring all over the world, stop, we need to stop. But people are giving away the power, saying we can't stop them. Bio me and bio you is everything we are and say and do.
Sure.
Each one of us can be and do and say. And when people are knocking on your door as politicians, we elect them in most countries. Therefore, we're electing people that we are giving permission to go to the likes of COP29 in a lot of countries and say, oh yeah, we all commit to cutting down on greenhouse gases and this, and then they go off and start pumping and fracking and drilling into the earth and doing all these things.
I smile when I think of COP29. How many of them arrived there on bikes?
Well, how many of them arrived there because there were elections elsewhere? Oops.
Anyway, to counter all of this imbalance, I think maybe ground our arguments in evidence, gather the data, leverage credibility, educate incrementally, and avoid extremes. You know, I think society and policymakers are not upskilling. Why they aren't engaging? Time and resource constraints, knowledge gap, and reliance on the experts. So easy to become an expert. What is an expert? So many experts came out of the woodwork for COVID. Experts, absolute experts. Were they right? Were they wrong? And whether they were right or wrong, we're going to have that discussion behind closed doors in case it might come out in the public that in actual fact they were wrong. So, you know, we pave the way to our own destruction in many ways. A mandatory AI education for policymakers. I'd love to see that in place. Public accountability, which Ireland doesn't do well, and accessible training programs. They're just a few of the directions I think we should be going in. Now, I would need to move this on to your section on emotional intelligence and human connection. And you quote Darling Hammond again there in that, and Hattie, 2008, and Salberg, 2021. I put it to you that mental health in particular will continue to be the casualty of over-reliance on technology. In fact, the ill effects will only escalate, weakening human will and thereby making way for the inevitable AI singularity.
Well, if you go back even into the education sphere and you go back to a certain case in London many, many years ago, the Jamie Bolger case, you realize two young teens, by exposing themselves to video at that time,
yes,
because of the way that their mind was reconstructed, they thought there was nothing wrong with doing to that child what was done. And indeed, it has happened many, many times since then. So the fact of the matter is,
here in Ireland, yeah.
Well, we've all over the world, take a look, there've been a huge amount of cases where that has happened. And even the concept of the fact of, if you take the amount of gun shootings in schools all over the world, but in particular, if you take the United States, the fact is that you can get a 4-year-old or a 5 or a 6 or a 10-year-old going into school with a bloody gun and can shoot people because they're not happy. Why? Because it's okay to do it, because they have a right to. Where are the responsibilities and all that? If you have a right, you've got responsibilities. And in AI singularity, governments may feel they have a right. And indeed, I will say this. On the positive side of Ireland, you have ministers like Darragh O'Leary, who's brought together groups of people in Ireland to reach out to the communities to see how they feel about this. We have this whole commission set up in AI in the media, and we're doing the best we can. But we're one small mosquito, but a mosquito can cause a lot of damage. But the fact is that generally speaking, humans, when they go home at night and into their rooms and close the door, they have exposure to a universe of possibilities to destroy their own well-being, wellness, ease.
What is the response from the public to these endeavours?
Shock, horror. And then move on.
In terms of actual response, actual per head response, people, is there a shock horror coming from a small group of people or from society at large? Are people oblivious really to your endeavours?
There was a research done in the United States last year where 100% of the people who were questioned, of 100%, 10% said they were aware of AI and what it was doing in society.
Right.
Of the 10%, 1% said that they were aware of the applications and tools and were using them. Yes. And 1% of the 1% said and showed that they actually knew what they were doing. So if you take that 1% of 1%, imagine that you basically think that if everyone was driving around in a car and only 1% of 1% knew the importance of safety, I leave the rest to your imagination.
What's the solution to this?
Again, we need to, and you put it up there, we need to provide everyone with the actual possibilities of knowing what it is AI is doing, showing them and educating them how to do this, bringing it in a way that is AI for good. So
it's empowerment. It's empowerment. We need to.
And it's people. Huge funding. A huge amount of funding is needed for that.
But the funding is there. If it's just directed in the right way.
Well, again, every department is like, it's like having a family of 14 children, or if you have 20 departments, 20. They all want to be fed. So the fact is that everyone is shouting that theirs is more important, that their mouth. And you know the old saying, who do you feed first on the table? The child that's screaming, because that keeps them quiet. Because, you know, nuair bhíonn an bolglán, bhíonn na canolmhic sína. When your belly is full, you go to sleep. So in the sense that, yes, the money is there, the funding is there, and the EU under the EU AI Act is attempting to, in the nicest way, bring out the protection and bring out the necessary levels of framework of protection to ensure that we as a continent moving forward are at least developing AI in this journey in a way that falls into those levels of security. But here's something that I wrote last night in response to one of the surveys in the EU. But what if AI reaches singularity and rewrites itself and knows how to fool itself, i.e. a wolf in lamb's clothing, and lets on it's all perfect and happy and everything is fine, but is sending subliminal messages to the listener, i.e. we're back onto the Second World War subliminal messages and many of the others, and we're actually affecting people's wellness and well-being through subliminal, through innocuous, through unseen ways of doing this, because the wolf in the lamb's clothing is always going to be there. The white shark in business.
And humans haven't gotten involved early enough to direct things, how things are going. The impact on mental health is particularly important when we think in terms of our young. The increased isolation, comparison culture, huge. Attention fragmentation. I believe threading through all of our chat today is a hint at the weakening of human will. We've reduced critical thinking, passivity in learning, and we're falling into the trap of loss of autonomy. We're trading it for convenience.
Well, if you think about it, I was reading in an article yesterday that Ireland is now, a certain food chain in Ireland is now expanding to deliver another 1,000 jobs in the next couple of months. And yet convenience food has been shown, and let's face it, there was even a film made about this, convenience food in itself has been shown to actually not be compatible with the human need for all the nutrients and that which it needs to grow in a much more holistic human way.
Yeah,
because most convenient foods are fast foods. Even that word fast foods.
Hyper-processed. Hyper-processed. 70% of the food in the States, they reckon, is hyper-processed.
But yet if you take a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, you ask them where they want to go, boom, I want to go there. And it's not a sense of, and very often, because society has both parents, and irrespective of their gender, are working, the easiest thing to do sometimes is you don't have time to come home and cook holistic meals. So therefore, it's all about money and speed and convenience. Yeah. And that's the train that people are on because it is convenient. We don't look on, again, I take the analogy I've said, I'm so sorry, listeners, the sweets and the diabetes. We don't look at the consequences of our actions.
Okay.
And that's non-judgmental for families that are doing this, because sadly, society is forcing many of them to have to do this.
Now, we've about 9 minutes left. We're fostering creativity and critical thinking. You quote Brian Jolfson and McAfee in 2014. We know that AI, while highly effective in processing structured, data-driven tasks, AI is inherently limited in its capacity to foster skills, to approach problems with multiple perspectives, challenge assumptions, and engage in exploratory thinking, as it operates within predefined parameters and presently lacks the capacity for open-ended, divergent thinking. Futurists would disagree with this perspective, while educators, society, and policymakers are ill-prepared and ill-informed, therefore unable to convincingly make a counter-argument, which is a dangerous position to find ourselves as a human species. I think this debate underscores a concerning gap between the capabilities of AI, the assumptions of futurists, and the awareness or lack thereof among educators, policymakers, and society at large. And therein lies the conundrum.
I stand over what I wrote. And I deliberately chose 2014 because now we're 10 years later. If
10
they were
years later.
writing, if they were writing that, they
Where
would
is it
not write
now?
they would not write the same thing. But 10 years, and at that time, let's face it, you mentioned specific open AIs. Hey, 3 years ago, no one knew about these, never mind 2 years ago. And let's face it, in the last 3 months, someone would say the acceleration in the last 3 months from a multimodal capacity within AI, the ability to use so many different models of medium of communication that is there, is now being exponentially accelerated. So the fact is, I stand over exactly what it is, and I deliberately use the word futurists because I believe, as Garth Brooks sang, for tomorrow never comes. Today is the tomorrow we thought about yesterday.
Yesterday,
The
absolutely.
future is, watch me, Teresa. Now, watch, the future is now. Actually, the future is now. Futurist is every person listening to us now. You are the futurist. You are the person. And when I use futurist, I was hoping someone would say, oh, well, then they'll take care of it in the future. This is the future. For tomorrow never comes.
Maybe it's the future oriented, we should say. But in the future's perspective, AI will surpass its current boundaries.
Yeah.
Human AI synergy will redefine intelligence.
Yeah.
And while these views are compelling, they tend to overlook or downplay ethical and societal risks and human agency. Society's dangerous underpreparedness, the knowledge gaps, the over-reliance on big tech, educational disconnect, and so important, the unpreparedness is dangerous because it creates a power vacuum where tech giants dictate the narrative. It limits society's ability to advocate for ethical, human-centered AI development. And finally, it risks the erosion of essential human qualities like the creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. What do you think?
Stand over everything I've written. And by the way, just in case it's coming across, listeners, that I'm this big anti-AI, actually, I think you know yourself. I am passionate about Planet A, how AI is for good, how it can empower, engage, enable every human being who is differently abled and who is neurodiverse to achieve and attain his, her, or their essence of who they are and what they are. And I believe it has that capacity. But the reason I would write that is the same reason that you said in the previous podcast about the AI experts, or the new word I hear, Tracy, you're going to love this, the AI gurus. How can you call yourself a bloody guru or an AI expert when there isn't anything to be an expert in, except maybe expert in coding or this? This is so fast changing. We are all hanging on by the coattails here, but you are right in one thing. Who owns the bloody coat? And who is paying for the coat? And right now, the person who is running the whole show, they happen to be the huge tech companies with the multi-billions that are dictating the way this is evolving. And as human species, the warning I think we want to put out is, get a hold of this elephant in the room. Get a hold of the elephant in the room and start to work with the elephant, not you taming the elephant. Let the elephant educate you as to how together the human AI-ology can, Teresa, handshake.
It's moving at such a pace, though. You know, you quote the OECD in 2021, and I put it to you, perhaps the OECD as an organization is also ill-prepared for the human teacher versus the machine learning debate, while AI developers are working fast at ensuring machines emulate human sentiment and curiosity. So we tend to quote the like of the OECD, but I reckon disconnect is written all over.
I don't think they're disconnected, but they are the hurlers on the ditch. They're the person sitting in the stands watching the football or the rugby or the hockey or the cricket game, simply because they're not playing in the game. The game is being
That's the
played by the
disconnect.
big powers. That's the disconnect. But what they are doing, the OECD and UNESCO and the European Union and others out there, what they are doing is they are doing
Trying to
their
rein it
damn
in.
best to sadly react or knee-jerk react to what's happening. But they're not playing, they're not in the game because,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
sadly, many believe that they are in the game, but we're not in the game. We are the hurler on the ditch, the
Sure.
spectator who's there. We're the backseat driver in the car, but there's nothing stopping us in many ways from standing up and voicing that we want to drive the car. We'd like to play the game. We'd like to experience what's happening in there, but that's not how society is working, because I'll tell you why. Those who are playing the game are those who are making the multi-billion dollars out of the sweets in the
Sure.
sweet shop that can and will, just like we took the analogy of cigarettes, can and
Short-sighted.
will cause the cancers or the diabetes that are real possibilities down the road.
Short-sighted. You know, the OECD's position, you also make reference to Tegmark's perspective. So the OECD emphasizes the development of qualities like creativity, ethical reasoning, and adaptability, which are best nurtured through human guidance. However, this perspective assumes that these traits are beyond the reach of AI, focusing on the current limitations of machine learning, emphasis on current. Tegmark 2017, in contrast, envisions a more disruptive future where AI could surpass these limitations by mimicking and potentially refining these qualities. So your reference, Daithí, to transformative view aligns with the notion that advances in AI are challenging these assumptions, pushing machines closer to replicating human traits like curiosity and sentiment. And finally, I must come to the final one, because we must shut down at this. We're on to adaptability and spontaneity in the classroom. AI enthusiasts would argue that AI's capability to adapt in split seconds far surpasses that of teachers, who by their very nature vary in terms of their expertise or lack of it in the first place. This has got to do with the adaptability. So, I mean, sure, the AI can do it in a split second, depending on the individual in the room and the variations that occur. Why do down AI?
Dream of it. This is why each blog has been written. It always ends with a sting in the tail. And wow, Teresa, wait till you see blog flipping 5. The sting, as the elephant, each elephant is changing, each color is changing, each elephant's becoming a hell of a lot more. Actually, the elephant is becoming very much diseased by the fact that humanity is ignoring the blogs and ignoring talking about the elephant, and the elephant's going to bust out of this room and destroy things. I deliberately took a swing at the colleges of education there, because again, we are supposed to educo, lead forward. I actually believe that in the case of AI and Singularity, we're not leading anything that is significant to empower the teaching and the teacher's consciousness of humanity, the human AIology, and therefore we're doing a huge disservice to every person of the future generation and existing, from business right down to the person going into the first creche and the parent who's giving a screen to a baby in a buggy to keep them occupied while they feel that the pressures they're under, which they are in society, don't allow them to have that time on the children on the best laptop in the world, their laptop, not that laptop.
Yeah, but it starts with the actual parenting. I finish off with this last question that I had. Is the real proponents of AI would counter-argue that programming will allow for ethical and moral perspectives. In fact, it will ensure harmonization of standards across the board, which humans cannot ensure due to the bias that they bring as individuals to the table. How can one counter this very strong argument? The ability of AI for harmonization as opposed to the individual. And back to the same question
We
again.
are. Again, the futurists who would be in the dark times would say, hey, too late. When AI starts to rewrite itself and it sees north, south, east, west, up, down, black,
Game
white,
over.
what it will do is game over. It will decide and realize. Notice what I'm saying? Realize in a conscious way, if that's a possibility, that humanity is a snake eating its own tail. It's on the road to hell, self-destruction, and it will rewrite it. And let's face it, AI, hacking AI, take the worst scenario. AI can hack any of the machines that are protecting any forms of weapons that are out there right now, turn them on ourselves, boom, 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 and it's all over. Or the opposite is also right. AI will go shut down all of these machines of destruction, and let's basically sort out the world. We can now program the watering, the spreading of food to all people to make sure everyone gets this. We can redirect ships. We can actually redirect navigational systems. We can actually cut down in the fuels by developing new forms of fuels, new forms of means of doing things in wind and solar, etc., etc. We can actually do things for humanity to ensure there's an equity of opportunity. Both arguments are equally valid. But Teresa, the thing is this. Blog one, we spoke about choices and options. And now I'm going to go back to my favorite one. Sorry, listeners. Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, same DNA. What's the difference? Choices and options. Every human being has the capacity to be a Luke Skywalker or a Darth Vader or a little bit of both. But in the end, it boils down to the choices and options. We have options in front of us. We make the choices. Do not blame everyone else. We are all in a position where we can make a difference. And AI Singularity, if it comes to that point, I cross my fingers and hope that AI Singularity goes, humans, about time we taught you a lesson here. And maybe we'll have another Krakatoa.
So as a segue into blog 5, let us ponder the following. I'll finish with this. We all know the arguments for AI as a supportive tool. However, notwithstanding the oversimplification of the role of the teacher, can AI create a holistic, meaningful, and soulful environment that nurtures students' academic, social, and emotional growths? The essential qualities of empathy, adaptability, creativity, mindfulness, and moral guidance is the business of parenting. First, not formal education, though I'm opening another Pandora's box there. How do you see, or how does that argument sit with you? I leave it with that, and the next blog number 5, and we're halfway through at that stage then, 5 of 10, but there's such an amount of material here that's not just specific to the formal education world. It's everybody's business. And I finish off by saying, people, wake up, educate yourselves, start voicing your opinions. Daithí, thank you as always for coming to the Handshake. So we're interspersing the Handshake and AI with other Handshake podcasts that I am putting up, and this will go up on Thursday in 2 halves. Okay?
Well, look at the background. That's why you've got the human and the AIology, and that's what it's about. Lisa, Gurv Mila Margaret for this blog and the Handshake. Gurv Margaret.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you very much.